I know you're sending me a few messages about RPAs in baseball and how you think that those will potentially grow in
Well,
value over time, or at least in demand.
I wanted to get your thought on that. Like, I wonder if there's an opportunity for growth there. Um, just an interest and desire and collectability, because the one thing that's attractive about 90s, and I think there's a lot of folks that love those 90s cards, myself included, excuse me, is that the fact that there's the provenance of the player one. And what I like about, and and you've already talked about this on your spitballing podcast, which is, yeah, if you folks that are watching this now, go back and check out some of those episodes. They're terrific. Phil and his group there with Scotty B and company, really great stuff. The last couple episodes are just money in the bank. Great topics, great conversations. The one that triggered this was the debut patch. I think you guys all unanimously thought that was a win for Topps and Fanatics. I agree wholeheartedly. To me, I love the patch auto. The one-on-one is great, but I'm not going to focus on the one-on-one so much, because that's a little bit harder to attain. If you're going to collect, if you actually want to, even if you invest, you want to put some cards into the table on a player that you really feel has a future. It's harder to do it. I think you're gonna have to think about moving forward, because there aren't as many options. Your Topps Dynasty is a really premium product, great product. It's expensive to get into the box, right? You can break into it. You can buy the singles online, raw, and grade them. I think especially these patch autos, the grade is nice, but it doesn't. The grade isn't going to kill you, right? The grade isn't going to kill you. And that's why I like it about the patch autos and going to PSA. You go to PSA because PSA is going to always carry a premium, regardless of the grade, if you buy the right brand of patch auto and if it's actually game worn. I like Fanatics in the space because I feel like they're going to bring the authenticity of the patch. I feel like this is a step in that direction. The patch is now going to be game worn, maybe even, and they have this on this day product that folks might know about, where they have like a little hologram. It tells you the exact game the patch was worn. They have some pretty nice patches with the auto. And yeah, there's a bunch of 1 of 5s and 1 of 25s. And I know they're serial numbered to death. Don't get me wrong. Don't focus on that so much, on the serial numbering. Focus on the patch itself. You can have fun with the patch itself. How cool is it? How many colors? How prominent is it? And the auto, how strong the auto is. Like, these are the kind of plays you can have on the card itself, the player. It doesn't even have to be an RPA. But I think with Topps and Fanatics coming in with this whole jersey thing, I think there might be an opportunity for Topps to capitalize and make Dynasty like the Flawless or the Immaculate or the National Treasures of baseball. Maybe baseball can finally jump on that bandwagon where you got these great patches, autos, even past players that are retired, post-playing new players, getting some really cool patches. Not sticker autos. I mean, there's got to be things that have got to be met. It's got to be game worn. It's got to be a decent looking patch, and so it has to be guaranteed game worn, decent patch. Has to be on card auto. The auto has to be sharp. You don't want any of these streaky, sharp auto. And then the grade sort of kind of becomes like, it's okay if it's an 8. Even if it's a 6, people will still buy that because it's game worn. There's something about that. I think there's a play there. What do you think? I know I just rambled quite a bit, but what do you think about that?
For a while, I've liked Topps Dynasty, and they offer something that really none of the other Topps brands do. And arguably, you could put those up against Bowman Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
Autograph, pick your color, through blue. It's got an advantage because you've got a game used patch in addition to the on card autograph. In addition to, it's more rare when you factor in all the different variants. So you pick like Jordan Alvarez from 2020. He probably had like 6 or 7 different images. Each one of those images had a 1 of 1, a number to 10, and a number to 5. So what's that, like 6 times 16? So you're looking at roughly 96 different cards, which is actually really low if you compare that to any other
Really,
set. So to your
really.
point, the what it's a number to doesn't matter as much as the patch or the autograph or the player. It helps if it's a rookie, of course, because then it's truly an RPA. But the grade doesn't matter, right? It's not going to create that much differentiation because there's already so few of these, right? And they already are known to not grade well. And some people prefer them without them being graded, right? In the initial, the
Mm-hmm.
original mag with the top sticker.
Yep.
So I guess it has a lot of good things going for it already. It's been around for a while, but they don't sell for as much as what I would call inferior products that Panini's created with National Treasures, which might end up moving to Fanatics at some point. Flawless and National Treasures, if you look at the prices those sell for, if you look at the demand, if you look at break costs, cost of wax, cost resale of the singles, again, like National Treasures in basketball and in football, those aren't game used, I believe. Flawless in football, they're not game used. In basketball, I believe they are. That's 1 out of 4, right? It doesn't seem like, and also the hierarchy of what's more valuable doesn't, for those collectors and buyers and speculators, doesn't really relate to whether the patch is authentic or not. So then you move to a sport like baseball, which has had this product for a while, and you could make a number of arguments as to, well, Topps doesn't know how to execute a high-end set product. Okay, well, what is Fanatics going to do differently? Because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to people's preferences. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, you're not just comparing Topps Dynasty to Flawless with other sports. You're comparing also Topps Dynasty to Bowman Chrome. Why would people within baseball prefer Bowman Chrome autograph cards? These are pre-existing preferences. These are preferences in demand that has persisted in a certain way over the course of 10 to 15 years. There's been legacies and, again, like a history, prices. We've got price histories for those two products. Right now, there's a one-of-one Otani RPA from Dynasty on eBay, and at one point it was listed at like 250,000. If that was his one-of-one Bowman Chrome autograph from 2018, he's got two, I believe, two of the supers. Those would have sold at that price already, and there's two of those for Otani versus a normal situation where you're dealing with just a first and one of those for a particular player. So the dynasty's sitting there. I don't know what sort of interest this person's gotten, but you think over time people would prefer the intrinsics and also the, oh, let's not call it rarity, but relative rarity at least versus tops, other top sets and Bowman
Mhm.
Chrome autographs. You'd think that that would change in time, but when is it going to change? Fanatics did make some changes to the more recent dynasty. They included like a diamond in the card, like, you know, a fake one or a pearl, and they made it more like shiny. They increased the price of the boxes a little bit, but you need to increase prices a lot. You need that demand to justify that, or else these aren't getting sold. You know, at the end of the day, you need people breaking the product, and breakers can only do so much to pump hype products. People are going to look at those resale values. And within baseball, it's a different market, right? You've got more collectors, less investors, speculators. So maybe there's a reason for the needs and wants to be a little bit different across sports. Having said that, being a collector, I mean, the Dynasty cards, there are collector Facebook groups that are designated to Dynasty, and there's people that do love these cards a lot, that do have long time horizons, I believe, for these cards. I
Mhm.
actually think year 2022 was a good year for Dynasty. I think it outperformed almost any other product. Did the cards still go down? Sure, like anything else, but I think they actually held their own pretty well. So there seemed to be a little bit of a Dynasty adjustment in, I'd say, 2022 and maybe throughout this year as well. So what else is it going to take? Now you've got the MLB debut patch, and I mean they executed this even better than the Dynasty in that now there's one, and it's guaranteed to be linked to a game. So you get game matching and a very meaningful game match, their first major league game, and also the images from that first major league game. So what else? What on earth could beat that? Nothing. So I think this will be a strong test to buyers' needs and wants from a baseball perspective.
Yeah.
Going back to some of the arguments with Fanatics and how they, well, with Tops and how they can't execute a high end brand, this is probably Fanatics giving it their all. So, what kind of an impact will that make? And then once you actually have good players, which won't be probably till next year, unless you count Anthony Volpe, Jordan Walker, McLean, and a bunch of pitchers this year. I think you need some sort, as I mentioned, that Spitballin podcast. Like you need a player to set the market. And then maybe that can then adjust people's preferences after they're like, oh, well, these are cool. Where else can I get something like this? Oh, Topps Dynasty, or maybe these other sets that Fanatics creates, because I assume with their relationships with the leagues, with their sort of, you know, already have their hands in memorabilia and attire. Um, they have more opportunities to be creative, probably with more game used stuff. versus event worn stuff, which they could also do, which we're also doing with the first Stitch card. So yeah, maybe at some point the MLB debut patch will open people's eyes. I think that could be like the catalyst event, if there is one, that could then swing people even more in favor of Dynasty versus people's legacy preferences for Bowman Chrome autographs.
You can make a really good point there. I didn't even think about um, the debut patch setting the market, basically setting the temperature for those types of cards. Because if you look at like what do you call it? There's the RPA, the National Treasures RPA, the Shield card. What do you want? I mean, there's all these different cards, basketball, football that sort of go. That's the card, and then there's like the cards below it that are still great, the flawlesses and all these that people still chase because they kind of want to get close to that, but they can't really get there. That's where I feel like Topps Dynasty will maybe benefit from that. Maybe even Topps 5-star if they start guaranteeing the patches, because 5-star is a terrific brand as well. Really cool brand. Some beautiful cards, like some of the most aesthetically pleasing looking cards I've seen. We used to have a handful of Trout's 5-star patch cards. They're just gorgeous, beautiful cards.
One of the things also we should bring up is that there's certain people in the hobby. This is a common viewpoint that game use stuff in baseball doesn't matter as much as the other sports because there are so many games, and because of that, there's a lot of different material and uniforms. I don't know if that's necessarily true. There might be a part of that that's true, but if you're to make that argument, couldn't you also make one with football versus basketball? And like, well, football stuff should be more expensive than basketball because there's only 17 regular season games. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think people would still go with basketball. It's tricky because you've got people, more crossovers that are in the basketball market that were sneaker flippers or collected sneakers and other game worn materials. So there's also that's going for basketball as well, where you probably don't get as much like, do people really collect like football cleats of a certain player? I don't think you really get that. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to watch. And are there arbitrage opportunities, or is this just the way the market's supposed to be, and it's not really going to change much?
Might not. I think the devil's in the details when it comes to patches, though. I think with baseball, you see some of these patches, like, okay, this obviously either came from a game used jersey or it came from a batting practice jersey. I mean, I don't know if it's from a game or event, and it's obviously from a jersey. You can tell, right? I would steer clear of the just clear napkin type. Those ones would make me nervous. You want to see some actual like logo, lettering, nameplate, something to kind of give you that, okay, this is obviously coming from the jersey. Whether it be a game used jersey in a Major League Baseball game, official game, or if it's a batting practice. I don't know if it bothered me that much if it was batting practice. So if you're differentiating between those two events, I don't know if that bothers me that much. If the patch is really nice, as long as it was game used, right? So the patch is everything when it comes to the card, I think, at the end of the day. But yeah, you make a good point. It may never change. Maybe it's just I'm thinking more as a collector too. I think if you want to go put together a collection of cards that catch the eye, that are cool, and you want to show, because if I think about, okay, I want to show off my cards. A lot of the cards I have right now, if I'm going to show them off, the expensive ones, is I have to explain why it's important. It looks cool. Some of them look really cool, but this is why it's important. The patch cards are actually really fun because the people are actually looking at a piece of a jersey that the person actually wore. Now, that's kind of neat. It's exciting. It's fun to explain to a non-collector, to someone who doesn't really know anything about the hobby. If we're talking about growing the hobby, right? I think getting people excited about that and the provenance behind the patch itself, the hunt of trying to find the really good patch, the uniqueness of it, the rarity, because every one of these cards, they might be numbered to a certain number, but the patch itself, they're all different, right? There's something unique about the patch you have because no one else has that exact same one, right? That's exciting. No one has the exact same patch you have. It's always a little bit different. It's almost impossible to create the same exact patch. So something about that to me makes it fun as a collector to hunt that down and to be able to showcase that to someone who doesn't know anything about cards and go, hey, this is cool. Player wore it, they signed it. This is from, we don't know what game it's from, but this is a patch from this jersey. You can kind of tell. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of meat on the bone there for me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, maybe one of the hurdles with cards like this, not saying that this is completely rational, but you made a good point, like the narrative that you have to explain that to someone, why this is meaningful, right? Like with a one of one debut patch, it's kind of an easier story to tell. But
Boom.
with 99% of game used materials that are embedded in cards, sometimes it requires that extra story.
Mhm.
Because of that,
That's
as
true.
a prospective buyer, maybe you're building in some sort of an illiquidity discount. So, when you have to sell the card, you have to explain why it's important to people. And it'll be easier to do that maybe in person if you've got time to tell said story, if you've got limited inventory where you can tell many said stories, if you've got a lot of these types of cards. But maybe this is just another hurdle for why, at least with the bone chrome autograph with the first on it and it's true blue, it's easier to see a price history, which is something you don't,
Mhm.
is an issue not just with RPAs that are like this that are all different, but also cards that are like that don't sell often, right? Thinly traded, one of ones. But in addition to that, then you've got this extra narrative for, well, with a superfractor, they kind of know the story already. But if it's a patch that has 4 colors and it's 3 of 15 that exist that have the tongue of a bird or a beak of a bird for a Pujols RPA, or maybe it's a second or third year patch card, even less recognizable, right? Um, then that could take some effort to convince someone of the card, right? And,
That's
and how
true.
important it is.
That's true. A lot of good counterpoints here. It's an interesting discussion. I think I don't know. We're obviously not going to create a market for these things. It was an interesting thought with that debut patch and what Fanatics could do to that segment of the hobby, those types of cards. Um, and basketball and football have led the way in when it comes to RPAs and patch cards. And I found it interesting that some of these cards are still important even though they're not guaranteed to be game used. But there's this huge desire to have them from the 90s. So would that translate over? You know? And Topps Dynasty is very interesting to me. Not to buy to sell, but just to buy to own. It'd be fun to collect them. But you'd have to collect the important players if you didn't if it would be easier to explain the story if it's Trout or if it's Acuna right now or J Rod, or Ken Griffey Jr. or somebody or Albert Pujols or Ichiro or these big players, right? It's if it's Kyle Tucker, sorry buddy, it might not be as that might be harder to explain. Is this going to be an important card to have? He may just be an average player over his career. I mean, that's like whatever. Um, I have a Kyle Seager one I'm going to grade. It's a great card. It's a Topps Dynasty Kyle Seager patch. No auto, but it's a beautiful patch. It's amazing. I don't know. I think I bought it for like $12. I mean, it's he's a Mariner guy. If you're a Mariner guy, Kyle, but his brother's the guy, right? But but it's a cool car. It looks amazing. But yeah, can't sell that. Who's gonna want that really? So, it's more of a collector thing for some players. But if you want to spend some money on a big player, it blows my mind that Otani RPA, so to speak, the one you're talking about. To me, that feels like it should be more valuable than the Super. Just to me.
Yeah, I think so. Juan Soto from 2018, who's also in that same set as Otani, he only has, I believe, 3 images, and Otani has at least 6 or 7 because he's
Mhm.
got like the hitting ones, the pitching ones.
Right.
So with those one of ones, you've got more than the typical 3 that you'd have from some other players. And now I think the standard is to have at least 6 images, like ever since like maybe 2019 came out and forward. And they probably even have more images than that at this point. But I think the main piece of your argument, not to bury the lead, but each year they're coming out with more and more Topps Chrome and Topps flagship type sets, or just top sets, Topps products overall. There's more and
So
more rookie cards. There's more and more confusion there. It's easier for a manufacturing company to scale in continuing to increase the amount of parallels and sets like 30% per year, right? With rookies. With game used stuff, they can only take that so far so quickly.
mhm.
So, if anything, if Topps Dynasty doesn't overtake Bowman Chrome, if Topps Dynasty or an MLB debut patch don't ever become similar to the logo men, the shields in football, I think at a minimum they can still outperform from a relative sense a majority of other Topps products that don't feature these game used cards that and even including Bowman into that mix. Um, because again, I think over time people will realize like, okay, this is the supply of non RPAs that are important, that are considered investment or speculative worthy cards, And then this is the supply of like the game use stuff, which actually has benefits, assuming it's also an on-card autograph, has
Mhm.
advantages as well with like the intrinsic qualities of comparing the two cards. It's like, well, it's got all the same stuff. It's numbered to the same thing, like, all else equal, but it also has an embedded piece of a really cool game use patch. So shouldn't that make it more important?
Yeah, and the player touched it. The player, the jerseys touched the player, and the players touched the card by signing it. I mean, you got all of it checks all the boxes to me. That is one of those weird things about baseball. There's a lot of things that's weird about the baseball card community, but that's one that's. But I think it's been explained because you don't have those cards. It hasn't been a well-defined market for those cards yet. You got your groups that you talk about, but it's not been well-defined. I'm really interested to see, like you said, you're totally right. How these debut patches perform and who sets the market, like a big player, like a Wander. I can't see his name. Like a Cooney or somebody else coming out, and that's their debut patch. How that performs, I think it's gonna go a long ways towards defining how that market of cards could perform over time. So I think that's gonna matter. But I think this is the right step, in my opinion, a good step in the right direction. Um, I love those types of cards personally, so I'm excited to see how that goes.
All right, good discussion. That is it, guys. Thank you for watching. Leave any comments that you have below. What do you think about game used items in cards, embedded in cards? What do you think about Topps Dynasty? What do you think about the MLB debut patch? And what do you think about all this stuff relative to all of the autographed rookie cards and parallels that we're already used to, the 10 or so Topps Chrome sets, each of which has 20 to 40 different parallels within it, and Bowman as well with similar things that they've employed. Take care, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Thank you.